Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sharik Abdul Ghani, and I am the director for Minaret Foundation, where our focus is multi-faith and civic engagement for the Muslim community. We have two very, very special guests here who are helping us to kick off an initiative at Minaret Foundation where we're going to be dedicating the rest of 2020 specifically to issues related to our brothers and sisters in Xinjiang, namely our Uyghur brothers and sisters who it doesn't need any explanation. It's been all over BBC, the New York Times, the United Nations continues to cover it. We just signed on to a letter from the International Religious Freedom Roundtable about issues related to our Uyghur brothers and sisters in forced labor. We know in Houston, it's touched us particularly with the closing of the Chinese consulate. I've said to many people, well, we may not agree with Mr. Trump's policies. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. So we know there's massive issues with the CCP. We know there's issues related to our brothers and sisters in Xinjiang, specifically because the United Nations, it meets what's happening to our Uyghur brothers and sisters has met the terms of genocide set forth by the United Nations and many other international NGOs and organizations out there. I don't really need to talk about what's happening with our Uyghur brothers and sisters, but what I would like to focus on today is more about what the response has been like. Not just from the Muslim community, because we know that the Muslim community is up in arms about this. We have organizations such as Justice for All, Helping Hands, Islamic Relief. There's a million organizations out there who are amplifying the voices of this injustice. But what we'd like to focus on today is more about what the multi-faith response has been like and what we all as individuals, whether Muslims or people outside of the Muslim community, can do to not only amplify the voices of UHRP and of CFU, but what we can do on ourselves at a local level, at a state level, and at a federal level to ensure that the voices of our Uyghur brothers and sisters are heard. But before we begin, I'd love to give it over to our panelists. We have Brother Mustafa Aksu from UHRP, the the Uyghur Human Rights Project, joining us today, and then we have Rushan Abbas from the Campaign for Uyghurs joining us today as well. Mustafa, could we start off with an introduction for yourself, please?
Thank you for inviting us to this webinar. So my name is Mustafa Aksu. I'm a program coordinator for research and advocacy at Uyghur Human Rights Project. And I'm also a graduate student at Indiana University of Bloomington and also board member of CFU.
Rushan?
Sorry, I had issues unmuting myself here. My name is Rushan Abbas. I have been living in the United States since 1989, and I have been involved in the pro-democracy protests when I was living in East Turkestan back in mid and the late 80s. And now I am the founder and the executive director for Campaign for Uyghurs. And my sister is in China's concentration camps for almost 2 years now.
Your sister is currently in one of the concentration camps in China. So to all the people who continuously say that this is blown up, that this isn't real, besides the fact that it's an internal matter, this isn't actually happening. They're willing participants in re-education. You would say, I would assume you would boldly say that is false and a lie.
Absolutely. My sister is a medical doctor, retired medical doctor. She speaks fluent Chinese. She doesn't need any kind of vocational training or learning the Chinese language to get a job. She had a very good job. She retired because of her medical reasons. She is abducted as a retaliation for my activism, to being a vocal. And also my husband's entire family is taken. So more than 3 years now. We have no information on my in-laws' whereabouts, my mother-in-law, father-in-law, 3 of my husband's sisters, and the brother-in-laws, 14 of his nieces and nephews aged between 3 to 18 years old.
Between 3 to 18 years old, so it's not just older boys and men and women, it's children as well.
Yes, children are being targeted. and taken to government-run orphanages to cut off their growth in our religion and in our ethnicity, any kind of connections. They are being raised with forsaking their Uyghur identity and their Muslim identity.
Well,
So
could you provide us a brief overview, if both of you could provide a brief overview of the current situation in China?
As we speak right now, 3 million Uyghurs are imprisoned in the China's concentration camps, and also millions more being used as slaves. And Islam is being treated as a mental disease. And basically, they outlawed any sort of Islamic practice as illegal religious activities, including Salam Alaikum. Imagine that, that's the most peaceful.
Just saying the greetings of salam.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum, what I did earlier, starting off the webinar,
Exactly.
essentially illegal.
Yeah, if you were in China, you would be in the concentration camps for saying that. And the mosques are being demolished and turned into nightclubs and the karaoke bars. Holy Qurans, copies of Holy Qurans and the prayer rugs, any kind of religious books are being burned. Uyghur children, as I mentioned, over 500,000 Uyghur children, according to the news media, they are taken to the state-run orphanages. The entire population is living in an Orwellian police state with no freedom to contact anybody outside of the world and no ability to practice their culture or their religion. Basically, China is waging war on Islam. And they even declared openly to the world that they must rewrite Holy Quran. Imagine that. There are news reports about that. Where is the outrage from the Muslim Ummah? While the Uyghur men are taken away to concentration camps or the prisoners, their wives, the Uyghur women, are forced to host the Chinese officials coming and living inside of their houses. Imagine that, that's your private sphere. Even that's being attacked now. The Chinese media reported 1.1 million Han Chinese cadres deployed to Uyghur homes to live inside of their houses.
So it doesn't just seem as if they're rounding up the men and the women, but they're doing everything they can to erase the Uyghur people from the planet. So they're taking away the culture, they're taking away the language, the religion, reproductive rights, they're even taking women's hair. And
exactly.
we've heard, very reminiscent of there's a show here in America called The Twilight Zone and Outer Limits. It reminds me of organ harvesting. This is the black market on organ harvesting. We know those are issues coming out of the Uyghur community over in China as well. So yeah, it's an attack on all fronts.
Right.
Complete erasure.
It's genocide, actually, active genocide going on.
And that's the word that we should be using. That's the word. That's the word that the world should be using. We shouldn't be afraid to use the word genocide because it is an actual genocide. And unfortunately, it seems as if genocide seems to have this negative content. Oh, you can't say genocide, and you can't lump Chinese people all into one area. It's not Chinese people. It's the CCP, and the Chinese government. And sometimes we get broiled down into semantics and arguing about language when in all actuality it is a genocide, and it's not only met all the trademarks for all the milestones for genocide itself, but we see it happening in real time in the news media. Remember when the video was just it was leaked out, it was a few weeks ago, of Uyghur men sitting next to a bridge, and it was a video, I think it was released on BBC or The Guardian, and that re-sparked what the Chinese are doing to the Uyghur to our Uyghur brothers and sisters. Mustafa, how about an update from you? What are you seeing from UVHRP?
Well, indeed, what is going on now in the region is genocide, and of course, some scholars call it cultural genocide, and some of them are saying that it is ethnocide. Whatever the term is, it is at the end of the day, it is genocide because. Based on the examples from scholarly works and evidences from camp survivors and from the report, it's clear that the Chinese government is committing the genocide in the region. What they are trying to do is to break the lineages by separating families, as Ms. Rushan Abbas said, and taking away children and placing them in the boarding schools, and as well as demolishing the mosques and historical and cultural Uyghur buildings. And the Chinese government is stripping of all essential cultural components of Uyghur life and leave nothing to the next generation, so they can grow up to be more Han Chinese than Uyghur. And in addition, Chinese government is intending to wipe out Uyghur identity by incarcerating the Uyghur people in so-called re-education camp and indoctrinating Uyghurs in systematic Han Chinese ideology, and to make them more loyal Chinese citizens. And I'm not sure if you have heard about this, but there's a program called pairing. So through pairing Uyghurs with Han Chinese as relatives, the Chinese Communist Party aims to undermine the Uyghur minds and impose this Han culture on Uyghurs.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on Han culture?
Yeah, so when Han Chinese, Han Chinese are the main ethnic group in China, and they take up 92% of the overall population. And so the mainstream culture is Han Chinese culture, and Uyghur culture is very distinct and different from it. So what they are now trying to do is to assimilate the Uyghur people and applying the different transforming policies to destroy the Uyghur identity and culture and language through re-engineering the Uyghurs to be part of mainstream Han Chinese culture and to render them not Uyghur at all.
You know, we study this actually in high school, in middle school and high school here in Houston. It's the exact same thing. It seems to be the playbook from what America did to Native Americans, to the Apache, to the Sioux. It seems exactly out of the 1700s and the 1800s and even the early 1900s from what we did to First Nations and tribal people here in America. Can you tell me why there's a debate on if there's a genocide or not? Why is the world still debating? Why are many people in the world still debating if this qualifies as a genocide when all indicators are there that it is?
Well, there are, as you may be aware of, there's a United Nations, Article 2 of the convention, and there are like 5 articles. And what is going on in East Turkestan actually meets the criteria to call it genocide. But of course, there's no in-depth scholarly work. People still have been debating what is genocide, what is cultural genocide, ethnocide, assimilation. But I think that's why one of the main reason that people are still debating about it, or they haven't been still convinced about the evidences that we present to them.
There's not enough videos and testimony in the world. And it seems to be, isn't this classic for the CCP to create disinformation and confusion, to delay and delay and delay and stall judgment by the world?
Yes, basically, in short, China has been testing the waters for genocide for decades. When you look at, as there has been practically no accountability for the oppression and the human rights abuses that the Chinese government has been perpetrated. So when even now, when you look at it, China's doing everything under the sun. The hair pieces that you mentioned, 13 tons of human hair, that is evidence. That's a hardcore evidence, byproduct of genocide. But why the international community is still silent?
Why do you think the international community is still silent? Could you offer us your blunt criticism on why why both of you believe the international community has been so silent?
Because Chinese blood money is buying the compliance of the United Nations, of the OIC, the Organization for Islamic Cooperation, of many Muslim countries, Muslim majority countries. Debt trap diplomacy, China is lending out a large sum of money to countries, and in return, they're asking them to basically taking China's side, not only just staying quiet, but taking China's side, supporting China's crimes against humanity.
Right, and
also,
an easy example for our audience is, just right when the Hong Kong issue started off, and there were mass protests about the government, the NBA, the National Basketball Association, essentially had a gag order on it because they had plans of expanding into mainland China that were being hampered because essentially the CCP said, well, if you want to expand into China, if you want to continue doing business in China, you're going to keep your mouth shut about Hong Kong. So this isn't something limited just to our Uyghur brothers and sisters, but it's something that they do across the board. Anytime the CCP will be embarrassed, anytime the Chinese government can be embarrassed, they put a gag order utilizing what you just said, trade, commerce, loans, et cetera, to ensure complicity by its partners, right?
Exactly. And also the Belt and Road Initiative, powered by the Belt and Road Initiative, that's going through almost 1/3 of the world, over 700 infrastructure projects. Actually, that is the main reason why China's taking step toward as a final solution to conduct genocide and eradicate the Uyghur Muslims. Also, United Nations, look at United Nations. As the second largest donor, China is manipulating United Nations and also gaining compliance from them. So when you look at, what is happening, basically, China is conducting a war on Islam, yet they are acting like they support Islam, and they are building the largest mosques in Africa and the other countries, and they are having Islamic conferences in the Southeast Asian countries. But eventually, the vision China has for the entire world is what they are doing to the Uyghur Muslims. So maybe it's too late to stop China right now, as the world communities wanted to stay silent and don't want to take any tangible actions, and they are making the Uyghurs as a collateral damage, human collaterals to short-term economy and the policies. But as Muslims, we have a direct stake involved here.
Mustafa, do you feel it's too late to stop the Chinese government's machine against Muslims worldwide, but also against our Uyghur brothers and sisters?
I'm still hopeful, but as Ms. Rushan Abbas said, Chinese government used their soft power to manipulate most of the Muslim populated countries in the Middle East and Africa. But I really hope, again, as I said, I'm still hopeful that we always say it's never too late to take some actions. So it is time to call all these OIC members and other countries to speak up against the Chinese atrocity and in the East Turkestan.
And OIC, for those watching, is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. It's a collective of Muslim majority nations who essentially have their own United Nations, similar to the African Union. And what Mustafa and Rushan have been saying repeatedly is that the OIC has essentially tied its own hands behind its backs, whether it be through negligence or because they've been forced to do so by the CCP. And again, the CCP is the Chinese Communist Party. If we could
add to that, what the OIC did. It's not just they stayed quiet at the beginning when this first concentration camps and what China is doing to Uyghur Muslims came to the public. OIC did take a step. They did release a statement criticizing China's policies at that time. That was the end of 2018. But just a few months later, after China sent 20 people delegation to Abu Dhabi when they met, they didn't only withdraw the criticism, but they went so far, they passed resolution commending the Chinese government to continue its policies against Uyghurs. That just tells you how China's money is being, before the humanity, before even our faith.
And that brings up a very important point, that there are, I was asked to be selective about the language that I use, but I want to say that there's traitors within the Muslim community themselves, famous imams, famous celebrity imams, who have come out and said that the Uyghur people, that there's a lot of dissent, terrorism, that they want to break away, et cetera, et cetera. And they've said this at a national stage. They've said it at an international stage in front of thousands and thousands of Muslims in the Middle East. What would you say to these people? Are the Uyghur people, and I say this very lightly, are the Uyghur people, are they trying to break away and split China down the middle?
Well, we already had an independent country back in 1930s, and 1944 was the last time. We did establish independent East Turkestan. China occupied our homeland, but since the occupation in 1949, they have been labeling Uyghurs under the different labels. They are using different excuses and different labels. They have been persecuting and killing basically Uyghurs, and now to the point that they are not allowing Uyghur Muslim, Uyghur babies to be born. They are not allowing Uyghur women to be a mother for Uyghur children while they are forcefully marrying Han Chinese. If they say no, then they are being viewed as Islamic radicalized Muslims because this Uyghur girl did not want to marry non-Muslim Han Chinese. So is that being radicalized? If you want to choose who you want to marry and to choose who you don't want to. So China is using war on terror very effectively. Before 9/11, actually just a couple months before that, just summer of 2001, China was releasing propaganda videos inviting the Western companies to come and invest, saying that this is a beautiful country and with most friendly people. Well, what happened to those friendly people after 9/11? They realized because we are Muslim, they can just use that war on terror and label all the Uyghurs as the terrorists. And they have been, overnight, claiming they are becoming the victim of the war on terror, Islamic terrorism. So as Muslims, as I mentioned earlier, this is not just the calamity of the Uyghurs. This is about Islam. When there was a priest in Florida said that he was going to burn one copy of Quran a few years ago, what happened? The entire world went on the street. The Muslim Ummah showed the unity against that. Well, right now, Uyghur Muslims are being cremated. There's a crematoria being built next to the concentration camps. Uyghurs are being killed, facing genocide. What happened to that unity? What happened to that outrage? There's a hadith in the Islamic Brotherhood saying that all Muslims like one body. If one part gets limped or gets hurt, entire body is supposed to react. Uyghur Muslims are being amputated from that body right now. Have you seen the condemnation? Have you seen any action from our Muslim Ummah? So when the perpetrator is China, and which a country has money, is that where our faith and our actions to protect our Holy Quran and our faith, stands by, just to become muted against China's blood money?
And Roshan, you make everything that you said is excellent. I would further it by saying that this isn't just limited to the Muslim issue. This isn't just limited to us as Muslims. That this is part of, if we don't stand up and stop this, if the multi-faith community doesn't stand with us, not just Muslims, but Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, if we all don't stand together against this Chinese aggression, then today it's the Muslims, tomorrow it's someone else. Yes. And we learned this with the Holocaust as well. that it started off with the Jews, but it went to the Gypsies and went to the Russians, it went to anyone who didn't look or fit a very specific profile. So it's not just that the Chinese hate us, it seems to be that the Chinese government, the CCP, hates anyone who doesn't fall into line. And we as Muslims, that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that we are strangers and will always be strangers in this world, right? We stand out very visibly.
Yeah, we are humans first before we are Uyghurs or before we are
Absolutely.
Muslims. This is about the human dignity, about the conscience of the world. As I mentioned, and as you just mentioned, it's not just that it's coming to the Uyghurs, it's coming to all other religious groups in China, the underground Christianity and the Catholics and the even Buddhists, the Tibetans. As you mentioned, for a communist government, any kind of original thought, any kind of believing to something beyond the communist ideologies is a threat. And also, it is about the protecting the Western democracy as well, because China is already visioning whatever they are doing to Uyghur people today as the future for the world. So they are changing the next world order, basically. If you mentioned the Holocaust, what happened? 1935, when the Nazi Germany first built the concentration camps and they started to put the Jewish people, the whole world continued to do business with Nazi Germany in the sake of economy. And they advanced, actually, Nazi Germany's economy to continue the Holocaust. But then they blamed later to the ignorance or information being slow, and they said they didn't know it. Well, now this is information era. This is 21st century.
Speaking of the information era,
anymore.
Speaking of the information era, with so much abundant information that the intelligence community has, that NGOs have, not just in America, but throughout the world, of Chinese aggression on the Muslim people. In the early 2000s, the United Nations signed something called the Responsibility to Protect Doctrine, right? And it's my understanding that that has not been enacted yet. Could you speak a little bit more to the Responsibility to Protect Doctrine, what it is, and how it could benefit the Uyghur cause?
Well, when going back to United Nations genocide, description on genocide, there's 5 elements, 5 actions. If any one of them is being conducted against one group, you can call it genocide. So, just coming back and emphasizing that term again, using the term genocide is important. And as a United Nations was formed to protect people from atrocities and the genocide and the other kind of human rights abuses, United Nations needs to step up and follow the principles and the rules and regulations that's based upon.
Why hasn't it yet? Mustafa and Rashan, why hasn't the United Nations stepped up yet?
China is
a permanent member of the Security Council?
United Nations, yeah, and it's Chinese money. The money is talking. Basically, China's money buying out the bias from the entire world.
So, really with the UN General Assembly convening in September, is there anything that we can do about that? What do we do to get the nations in the world to actually stand up and enact? Or how about this? What does it take to enact the Responsibility to Protect Doctrine?
Well, it's not just me and Mustafa talking as the Uyghurs or activists. There are 3 sets of leaked documents. It's not just, it is information blockade and we don't get much the witnesses and the evidence out, but there are 3 sets of Chinese government's own documents. So front of hardcore evidence, and the entire world is facing, and never again is happening all over again, if United Nations is not going to take a tangible, firm action in the September. then think about how they are going to look at their, in the future, their own grandkids and their children, and how did they answer when they ask, what did you do then to stop this? Because we are all responsible for what happens next, unless if we pull the bloodline, pull the plug from this evil regime and stop right now. This is not going to affect the future of the Uyghurs. This is going to affect the next world order. China has to be held accountable for the crimes against humanity that they are conducting today on our watch.
Speaking of accountability, I know both of you. Both of you have been, during COVID, you've been doing everything virtually. But pre-COVID, you're traveling the world, speaking at conferences, speaking to anyone who will listen, and doing the noble work of amplifying the voices of these silenced people. Up to this time, what has been the response of the international, or let's go specific, let's go local, of the American multi-faith community? What's been the response like? Have you seen widespread condemnation? Have you seen action? And have you seen more than just shows of solidarity?
Let me just say a few words, then Mustafa can add to that. Actually, United States government is actually doing wonderful. There is a Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act became law, and also there is a Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act that we need to be passed. So we need everybody who's listening here call their representatives and they ask them to sign. And also sanctioning so many companies who are complicit with this genocide, and also sanctioning the Chinese officials, and Bingtuan, which is the production construction corp, basically sucking the Uyghur people's blood for the past 70-some years. Those are the real tangible actions taken by our government here. And also interfaith organizations. Jewish community is being great in UK and in United States too. We have been talking, they're providing us the same platform that you just did. We are talking on panels to Holocaust museums, and also Muslim communities. But there are some Muslim groups actually being complete silent. When we contact them, when we write them, they are not even replying to our emails. I don't understand. They live in United States. They have all the information. I don't know what they are afraid of. If we are afraid of the Chinese government today, how are we going to answer when we, when we have to?
Ultimately, we have a little bit of internal housekeeping to do as well.
Yes, exactly. So we really want the Muslim community to support us as well as all the interfaith organizations.
Just because we may be of Pakistani heritage or of Indonesian heritage or Russian or Egyptian heritage, the Uyghur, what's happening to our brothers and sisters in Uyghur, in Xinjiang, I say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, they say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. That makes us brothers and sisters first and foremost.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yes. Mustafa, how do you feel the response has been?
In the last 2 years, I've been invited to give speeches at different states, mosques. I've been invited to some mosques, universities, middle schools, synagogues, and churches. They are quite sympathetic on the Uyghur issues, but I always feel like the voice is not strong enough. I think we, so far, Jewish community and Christian community are being really loud and supportive on the Uyghur issues. However, I feel like the voice of Muslim communities, including mosques, imams, and also Muslim student associations, are not strong enough. And we need much more support from the Muslim brothers and sisters. and we need them to take some actions. And we need them to talk to their representatives as senators about this Uyghur issues. And also we need more events to make people know about what's going on in the region, because from what I know, every time when I give presentation, I had during the Q&A, and there's Muslim students' first reaction is, "Oh, I have no idea this is going on in the 21st century." Yes, it is going on. So overall, what I'm trying to say is that we should encourage Muslim student associations, imams, and other Muslim organizations to speak up for the Uyghur people.
What are 3 ways in Houston or anywhere in America? What are 3 ways in Houston or anywhere in America that we can do to support the freedom of our brothers and sisters?
Okay.
Encourage all the brothers.
It sounds very specific. It's easy to remember. But I don't want this just to be a discussion, because I had mentioned to you all before we actually started, this is a kickoff panel for us. We're dedicating the rest of 2020 and maybe even beyond to this issue. You know, some of our interns, one of our interns specifically, will help put this together. She's talking about the Olympics and what we can do to get China. China is the host nation for the 2022 Olympics. What a travesty. It reminded me of when Nazi Germany was the host country for the Summer Olympics, right? Where I believe it was Jesse Owens, an African American, won gold for sprint. It's just travesty all around. But we've dedicated the rest of 2020 to focusing specifically on the issue, on the plight of our brothers and sisters in Xinjiang, our Uyghur brothers and sisters. But we want to do this through panels with you all, with our elected officials, with leaders in the multi-faith community, even attempting to bring together a multi-faith coalition of all the interfaith partnerships that we've worked on to highlight these issues, so more and more people can understand that, yes, even in the 21st century, genocide happens, that this is our Holocaust. This is our Holocaust, and it's happening right now in real time, and we are all benefiting from it through products, goods, treaties, alliances, and this is something that we as a people, we have to wake up to. So I ask, what are 3 things that we Houstonians can do to amplify your voices, amplify the voices of our brothers and sisters, and really try to make some concrete step towards change?
Yeah, I would say encourage everybody around you to raise this issue in any spheres of influence that you may have. Ask your leaders to host prayer times for Uyghurs, and arrange similar events that you are doing here to educate. And also when you talk to your relatives and your friends back home, please relate this, what is happening, because they're also becoming the victims of China's disinformation and the false narratives, and boycott Chinese goods. Remember, when you see made in China, means it's made with Uyghur slave laborers. So anything that's made in China should not be bought by anybody.
Roshana, is there a list of companies that our audience and just people can have access to that are complicit in Uyghur slave labor?
Yes, there's 83 company names, all brands that you name it, Nike and Calvin Klein and Gap and H&M, and it's on our website, www.campaignforuyghurs.org. We have information there, and just Google online. SP, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, did a detailed report on those companies. And also, please ask your representative to support the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, which is the HR House session is 60-10, or the Senate version is 3471. So, I cannot emphasize enough that we must stand together as one, and not to influence by China's money. And that this is not about politics. This is not about Republicans or Democrats or something about, like China's claiming or labeling us as terrorists or separatists. This is about survival, survival of the Uyghur Muslims. This is about humanity. So,
and to be clear, this isn't an issue with the Chinese. This is an issue with the Chinese government and its systemic discrimination and injustices. So my neighbors who are Chinese, this isn't about them. This isn't about discriminating, identifying a race of people and going after them. It's issues.
Right. Even Chinese people are becoming the victims of China's disinformation and the false narratives, because before China started this, they already inoculated all the Muslim majority countries, and also the Chinese people, regular Chinese people. They demonized our ethnic identity and stigmatized our religion. So when they actually started this, then nobody is going to support us. So as you said, this is about the Chinese governments, the Chinese Communist parties, chauvinistic racism, and the nationalistic idea of building the communism ideologies over any religion or any ethnic identity.
I also have a few action items to suggest. So the people in Texas or in Houston, what they can do is, the main thing is you can go to the Uyghur Human Rights Project website and Campaign for Uyghur website and click on what you can do. And definitely you should please ask your mosque to endorse the global campaign for fashion brands to end complicity with the Uyghur forced labor. The website is enduyghurforcedlabor.org. And also, from what I know, Senator Cruz already co-sponsored the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. And so please ask your Senator Cornyn to co-sponsor the same act. And
Senator Ted Cruz co-sponsored the
Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. Yeah,
he's
he did already.
been hit with sanctions by the CCP.
Yeah. And the third thing you can do is you can donate to the Uyghur organization fighting for their people, like Uyghur Human Rights Project and Campaign for Uyghurs. And we really need your help. And the donation is zakat eligible. The fourth thing you can do is follow Uyghurs on Twitter, especially Uyghur activists on Twitter and Instagram, and they would really thank you for listening to their stories. And there are a lot of good petitions, and I can send them to Minaret Foundation later if you would like to put them on your website. There are a few petitions like No Rights, No Games to boycott Beijing Olympics, and also and a few more, a few friends of mine, they have petitions to help them to rescue their father from a Chinese camp or Chinese prison. For example, very beloved Uyghur folklore professor Rahila Davut, or the writer Yalkun Ruzi, etc. So yeah, these are the main things you can do at the moment to help the Uyghur people.
And then the last question that I have for you, from both of you, what is one thing that you want everyone to walk away? If there's just one thing that you want people to walk away with from this video, what is that one thing?
I would say when you finish listening to us here, please realize that what we do right now will have enormous consequences for the entire globe, for our future. We really need to save this world from this vicious and evil communist regime, which has no respect for human dignity. And we must personally sacrifice and use every avenue available to us to speak out against these atrocities, against this genocide, and raise a support among our international community and all the other countries to take action to help Uyghurs and to inspire all the courage to act against this monster that threatens all of us.
And I would like to say it's time to say stop to the Chinese government. And if we don't take actions now, in the future, our next generation will ask us in one day, what have you done to help the Uyghurs? And I'm sure each of us do not want to stay silent and keep mute and tell them we done nothing. So it's time to take actions, or even a little thing can be a lot helpful. You don't have to take big actions, but at least contacting your representatives or talking to your friends, spreading awareness among your relatives is a thing that you can do at individual level. So I would ask everyone at this panel to take step and speak up against the Chinese cruelty against the Uyghur people.
Mustafa and Roshan, thank you so much for your time. We know that you're active speakers everywhere and you probably have a packed schedule. This issue needs to end, and we know, we in the audience and here at Minaret Foundation, we know that you're doing all that you can to bring more awareness to the situation at hand. And it's up to us as members of the audience. It's up to us to actually go out and do something, to call our elected officials, to keep talking about this with our friends and with our families, as Rashad had mentioned, but to post it on social media and not to hesitate and not to back away from a conversation. One of our audience members, Jim Ushkrat, just mentioned that there's a newspaper circulation here in Houston that distributes, has a distribution on Fridays that's mentioning the successful integration and assimilation of Uyghurs into mainland China. And that's something that we didn't know about, very embarrassingly. And our organization is going to be looking into this. That is absolutely unacceptable. And as the famous hadith where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if you are unable to take action with your hands, then take action with your tongue. And if you're unable to change anything with your tongue, then do it with your heart, make dua. And that is the weakest, that is the least possible thing that we can do. And I would encourage all of our friends on this video today and in the future who will watch it, please do something, say something, don't stay silent. Don't watch this video and let it not affect you and not let it affect your heart. But go out and say something, at least post something on social media and engage someone in conversation. Do more Googling and call your senators, call your congresspeople and tell them that the issue related to Uyghurs is important to you. My name is Sharik Abdul Ghani. I am the director of Minaret Foundation, where our focus is multi-faith and civic engagement. And I am joined by Mustafa Aksu of the Uyghur Human Rights Project and Roshan Abbas of the Campaign for Uyghurs. Thank you so much for joining us today. May the peace and blessings of God be upon all of you, and may God help and continue to help our brothers and sisters in Xinjiang. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.